Hello, 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 hello. Yep.
So this kind of level down here. So hi, welcome everybody. I'm Rob Allen from Avid. I'm here with Marc Carolan.
Hi.
Mixer front of house for Muse, probably the biggest rock and roll band in the world right now, playing huge stadiums around Europe. MCT's friend.
Yep. Yeah.
So and we go back a few years, mate,
we
right?
certainly do. Yeah.
We were talking about that before.
Yeah. JJ72 opening from Manic Street Preachers, or
Yeah.
even I think even before that.
Even before that, there was something else.
Yeah.
And then also, I picked up some stuff that you moved on to bigger things, and we've had a couple of bands in common. Actually,
That's right,
JG72
yeah,
I picked up after you left it, and then the Thrills.
That's correct. Yeah.
After you went on to
Yeah.
do this, I did
The
a bit of
Thrills.
Thrills. The Thrills. Lovely bunch of fellas.
Yeah.
So, how long is it now you work for Muse then?
I started mixing Muse in 2001, so this will be my 18th year. Yeah.
Wow. And how did that come about? How did you meet them?
Well, actually, JJ72 opened for Muse when Muse were on their Origin of Symmetry European tour. So we're doing kind of like, big clubs, small theaters, that kind of size. Paradiso would be a good example.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you remember back in those days where engineers had to share the whatever in-house console was going on.
Yeah.
So we had to share channels. And let's just say the engineers mixing Muse wasn't forthcoming with the channels.
You have one over there and three over there.
Yeah.
And you've got one channel compression and two.
There was one show where I had to mix my band on 5 channels.
Wow.
Yeah. So, but I use that as a little challenge.
Yeah.
So I would challenge myself with those 5 faders to try and make JJ72 sound better than Muse. But all joking aside, it turned out that Chris the bass player from Muse had come to see JJ72 at a show in the Bristol Anson Rooms. It must have stuck in Chris's mind. So on the Origin of Symmetry tour, there seemed to be some memory of that.
But that's the right way around for it to happen, right? The artist hears you mixing somebody else, and you get the gig that way. It's kind of a reassuring feeling.
Yeah.
It's you're not the mate of the production manager or something.
The terrifying bit about that was, that this was definitely a big step up for me.
Yeah.
But I'd already committed to some festival shows with JJ72, so I couldn't actually do all those Muse shows. So, Muse had, various other big name engineers come in and mix those shows I wasn't mixing, and thankfully they stuck with me.
Okay. So what was the favorite Muse show ever?
It was 2003. You might have to correct me on the year. The first year we headlined Glastonbury. We were on the Absolution tour. And Muse were in no way a big name band at that point. And I remember when we were announced as a headliner, there was a lot of poo-pooing and they can't do that. And we had Morrissey on before us, and he had words to say about it as well. And there was a sense of, we shouldn't have been there. And the band absolutely knocked it out of the park. Smashed it. Obviously, the first time we headlined Wembley Stadium, there was a bit of a feel of that. Muse are going to do Wembley Stadium, and then we did 2 nights. So, so that was a big moment. What was great about that for me was that we toured a lot, which meant I got to mix a lot.
Yeah.
And the often used phrase of honing your craft. There was certainly, a lot of time to do that. And proof is in the pudding now.
Yeah. Well, that's always the way, right? Hundreds and hundreds of gigs it takes to become a sound engineer.
Yeah.
You can't learn that at audio school.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Certainly, when I was coming up, as they say, like when I'd be opening alongside engineers like yourself, the idea of like keeping your eyes open, keeping your ears open, learning, and then keep doing that the whole way through your career.
Yeah.
That was the way I did it.
Yeah. We were talking about that earlier, weren't we? Kind of about that kind of getting away from the ideology of audio and just listening and being open to what you're hearing, not starting to listen with a specific idea in mind, right?
Yeah, where, the kind of purist approach, like, I don't know if you remember, there was a fashion like on people's riders where they would say absolutely no digital desks.
Oh yeah, I do.
That kind of thing, which you know, I mean, yeah, certainly way back in the dark days of very early digital consoles, you might have had a point, but, you know, certainly the way things have gone now, you know, you can't.
So here's a question for you. So when you use Virtual Soundcheck, right?
Yes.
You use Pro Tools and the SXL, the band play, you record it, the tools, you play it back. So in the production process, right? The production rehearsals, building the show together. Do the band come and sit with you? Do they come and work on the mixes with you?
It's generally more focused on when we're, you know, when there's new material coming in.
Right.
But what's great is that, you know, we've got, you know, and I've been working with for them that long that there's a shorthand. You know. And there's an understanding there as well. But certainly with details, they will come and listen, and they you know, they want to make sure things are right.
So I'm guessing Matt's very particular about his guitar sounds.
It's just that source, you know. He knows what he wants. He knows how to get it. I take a left and right. And that's it, you know.
And all the plaudits.
You know, and all the plaudits.
Well, that's
I turn it up and down.
I think the smartest decision a sound engineer can ever make is to choose a really good band to work with.
There's that, and also to know when to not interfere. You know, when to just leave it alone. You know, I mean, with Matt's guitar, you know, I do tell. I mean, we'll get into a bit of the plug-in stuff, but I use a tiny bit of the Pro multiband, and a tiny bit of a Tube Tech compressor. But it's hairs. You know what I mean? It's only for like some of the really extreme DI sounds where there's like a lot of you know, really, you know, super high content that, you know, coming out of a huge PA system at a large, you know, at big SBL, it just doesn't work on the ear, you know. So but it's just stuff like that. But it's all what I would call control, not color, you know, because he knows what he's doing up there, and you know, leave it alone.
Same with drum kits, right?
Well, there's two things with the drums around here. One, Dom is a fantastic drummer, absolutely phenomenal drummer, and a very consistently fantastic drummer as well. And then Jeremy Behrman, who's our drum technician, builds the drums.
Right. Wow.
So, you know, Jeremy may ask me, oh, do you think there's a little bit too much resonance in that rack tom? And I'll go, oh, maybe. And so instead of getting the moon gel out, he reshapes the rim. So that's the level, you know, of detail that's gone into the drums. You know, as you know, the drum sound starts with the drummer's arm. And then the stick, and then the skin,
But I'm guessing you have to model the drum sounds a lot, because the album's sounds of the drums have changed over the years, and you dipped into the dance music-y kind of thing as well. Some of those kind of drum machine sounds, and
so we've got a couple of live triggered sounds happening off the drums. Certainly more this time round, but never replacing the acoustic drum with triggers. Right. Well, sorry, there's one instance of Supermassive Black Hole, but it's obvious that he's playing electronic drums at that point.
So Marc, in the other community, I think you're quite famous for being, you know, mixing big shows with a big old animal, analog disc there. And I think, you know, there's some people out there in the world that are a little bit surprised that you've changed and, you know, you've made a transition. I mean, I know that you mixed back in the day in a profile and stuff, and I know that you're not an analog purist by any means, but talk to me a little bit about the transition from mixing this band on an analog disc to bringing the SXL back to the center of the show.
Yeah, well, I mean, you touched on one thing there about the you know, the analog purist. So it turns out, I kind of worked it out that with this system, there's less A to D paths than there was with my XL4 system. Because with how I used the Pro 2C sidecar, I was basically doing loop throughs. So there was actually quite a lot of A to D, D to A going on.
Sure.
Now, the reasons for changing were, there was a couple. One was, as you'll see with this show, it's quite theatrical. So our input kind of jumped again. So that.
What are you up to now?
Well, I mean, I'm often asked this question about how many inputs do you have, but it's not really. I don't think the number really matters anymore because there's so much control channels. We've so many multiples of, say, Matt's vocal is 6 different mics here and there. There's so much talk back. There's so much. So we've got we've got 2 stage rack system here. I think we're using at the moment about 112 lines there. But I don't have 112 live inputs happening here, So it's odd. Because remember back in the day, it's like, oh, he's got 32 channels. Who does he think he is?
I remember the first time I mixed the Mannix in an arena. With 13 channels.
13. There we go. Yeah. That beats my 5 JJ72 channels. So having the input capacity. So for instance, we need a drum kit on the B stage. I can now say, okay. The last tour I did with that XL4 system on drones, there were moments where we had to go like, well, no, we can't do that because this, that, the other. So it was to kind of give freedom back to the artist. From my own point of view, there was things that I wanted to move on with, how I was approaching mixing. And to keep learning. We were touring an A/B system of that XL4 system, as you can imagine. That was quite unwieldy,
Quite heavy.
and the maintenance aspect of that as well. So it was kind of a time for a change. And then the other thing was that Adam Taylor, who mixes monitors, he was on a Pro X, I was on an XL4. We were on different platforms, and so it was a little bit splintered.
So what made you choose the S6L?
Well, first of all, to get to the S6L, I looked at all the big players out there. I looked at all the big platforms, and there's a lot of great sounding platforms out there. And anyone who says, "Oh, you don't use that because that sounds bad," nothing sounds. At the top level, nothing sounds bad. They all sound good.
Absolutely.
What brought me to the S6L was a couple of things. First of all, it's pristine sounding. Now I know, to some people, pristine is a bad word, but what I mean by that is it allowed me to bring the character I wanted to it. It didn't impose its character on me.
Brilliant. So open platform, you can use the plugins. Outboard gear.
Yeah, well, obviously the control section and the snapshots and that whole part of this that was massive for me as well. I remember because I think when we were talking first about me possibly getting on it, and you just went, "You're gonna love this." I was going,
I tell you why I knew you were gonna love it, because I think you're a bit like me. You're a bit of a control freak, and you're a bit of a kind of
the details,
right? And I knew just from having known you for so long that when you saw the event stuff, that you would flip out, and you would, and not only that, but you would come up with a whole bunch of stuff that nobody else had ever come up with. So I was really excited about coming here. And you show me your events and your snapshots. So, MC, we're gonna reset the cameras. We're gonna get the chairs out of the way. We're gonna dive in on the desk, and we're gonna go through the show. I'm really looking forward to it. So that's gonna be the second half of this video.
Excellent.
Let's do that.
Cool.
Right, MC, here we are.
In
front of the S6L. Stood in front of these a little bit myself. Just would you talk me through the signal path, just from the beginning until we get it into the desk, and what you're doing with it once it's in the desk?
Cool. So as you probably noticed, there's a bunch of preamps sitting on top of the console.
Yeah, I did notice that.
So again, this is a color choice. That's what's going on here. It's the old XL4 preamp.
Sure.
So the main acoustic drum, bass, guitar, and Matt's vocal channels, his clean vocal channels, all come here. It's just simply an analog multi down to here.
Right.
Comes in here, AES's into the system. You drive the pre's.
Yeah.
It does what it does. Is it technically perfect? No, but it's that
it's
thing.
a color that you want.
It's that thing, yeah.
That's kind of part of it, right?
Exactly, yeah. All these channels also hit the stage 64s.
I was wondering about that.
Yeah.
To get to the monitor desk.
Well, yeah, obviously to get to the monitor desk, but also it allowed me the option on certain numbers. If I don't want that color, I don't have to have it. So you can see here I've got virtual pre's, XL pre's, or Avid pre's. That allows me to just quickly go, okay, that's the XL88, that's the Avid pre's.
Wow.
So I can flip those anytime.
It's a really cool feature.
Yeah,
that's a really cool way to use events.
Yeah.
When we get to our events, if you could show me the event for that's amazing, because otherwise that would have been
that would have been a nightmare. Yeah.
How would you do that? Big multi-chord changes.
Well, that's what we used to do, like change the multi-pins and all that.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, it allowed, and well, obviously we'll touch on this a bit more, but this is what informs a lot of these color decisions, was the ability to do something like that.
Yeah.
Because, you're not just making the decision based on, oh yeah, I like XL4 pre's because they do a thing, and then not really knowing what it is that you're not doing.
Right.
This allows you to actually, get the, so for instance, with the summer, I was able to hear, am I just doing that because I think something's cool, or is it actually bringing something to the party?
You're gain sharing on this tour, right? With the monitor.
Yeah. And I remember again, you kind of advised that we went that route, and I was a bit like, well, I don't know, and then it worked, and then I literally have not thought about it since.
Right.
It's utterly seamless.
Right. So just to be clear, both of you have a gain in a pad.
Yep.
Monitor desk is the master.
Monitor desk is the master.
So his gain in a pad actually changes the
actual thing, yeah.
And you have a virtual gain in a pad.
Yeah.
And the desk works out the difference between the two of them.
Yeah. Now, obviously there's been various systems like that in the past.
Yeah.
But this really is invisible. It's absolutely invisible.
So we got different paths into the desk. We got via, analog snake into some preamps. We've got the AVB digital snake from the stage boxes you gain share in. Got it into the desk. Mm-hmm. Right? Okay. So what are we, because we got loads of other stuff as well, right? So talk to me about this outboard gear.
So how I construct it is we start with the inputs. The inputs come in.
Yeah.
I'm a big believer in faders are not being done. Where inputs are combined for a result.
Yeah.
So I mean, a basic example is two kick drum mics.
In and out, is it?
In and out, even. I like to, combine them, make that decision, group it together, move on.
Yeah.
Snare, etc., toms.
Yeah.
Overheads, bass, and on and on and on. So that creates a kind of middle layer, or what I call my automation layer.
Right.
Okay, which is like our, the groups of the kick, snare, hi-hats, toms, etc., etc.
Yeah.
So generally at this layer is where some of this insertion is happening.
Okay.
So kick, snare, or the DBX 160s, bass tube tech, guitar tube tech.
Yeah.
Quite straightforward. And again, the reason I'm using these... Transient Designer and the toms, a little bit on the kick and snare.
Yeah.
The reason I'm using these outboard pieces as opposed to plug-in pieces is simply a color choice again.
Yeah.
It's, some of these pieces I've been using since I started mixing the band.
Sure.
So they work. And again, it's that don't interfere if it's working.
Yeah.
Ideology.
You use the Transient Designer, just lent in
No, well, actually, you can see how fine it is. You know, it's just a tiny bit.
Very
I actually
little.
use it in some stadiums to reduce the sustain of a kick drum.
Well, yeah,
Because the last thing we need is more sustain.
Yeah, yeah.
It's odd people go like trying to get that John Bonham kick drum
Yeah.
in a fucking stadium.
Yeah.
Okay.
No.
Anyway, so that's where the insertion happens at that layer.
Yeah.
So
And
so where, you know, there's fader movements or fine automation or whatever, it's generally happening at this layer. So as you see, as I
you
go
go through
through
some tracks.
you know, stuff moving
This
around.
is where the faders are moving.
The faders are moving. And then on the top layer
Yeah.
is essentially, so what I do is I take direct outs of these
Yeah.
and I use, and this is the only way I can make this work, but it's such a powerful tool, the trim plugin.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. And I take the input of the direct out of the group
Yeah.
and I'm able to use the output of it to route it back into an input.
Got ya. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Send and return.
Send a return through
It's
a
in
plug.
bypass.
Yeah, it's in bypass.
Yeah. It's
It's two samples or whatever it is. It's
Yeah.
4 samples. I can't remember. So those input channels
Yeah.
are then what I call my mix layer.
Sure.
And I think you've got the same approach. It's layout 1.
Yeah.
It's the stuff you need for that song.
What you need for that song.
Yeah.
Because you've got a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
You just want to filter it by the stuff that you need.
You need to
Yeah.
filter things. You know, you need to get that information to where you need it. I try as much as possible to keep relatively the same things in the same place to try and retain some muscle memory.
Yeah. Yeah. Totally.
So that, you know, you can react pretty quickly.
Vocals over here, is it?
Vocals generally, Matt's vocals generally that one there,
that fader,
right one
yeah.
there. Matt's guitar is right there. The
Right.
kick drum is over there.
Yeah.
You know, it's quite straightforward. I like to keep my master, an extension of the master fader down here. I just like the longer throw.
Got ya.
Because I spend so much time in
Yeah,
that fader,
yeah.
I found up here just felt a little bit unnatural to me.
Yeah.
It's only because I use it so much
Yeah.
that I've just put it down here in the long throw.
Got you. On my show, I only have it on that one.
Okay, there we go.
I have the always have the vocal in that
Vocal
one. We
on
have the
that
same.
one,
Yeah.
yeah.
So
Yeah,
that's the kind of obvious one, I guess.
So yeah, I also keep a kind of basic band VCA there all the
Yeah.
time, but hasn't moved in a while. And yeah, so that's how that structure works.
VCAs.
And as you can see, song to song, so how I use VCAs is quite minimally. It relates more in the automation layer. So
Okay.
sometimes the VCAs will do stuff in the automation layer.
Yeah.
In mixing the show, not really.
No.
Not really.
Yeah. Here.
Because that automation has already happened or that movement has already happened. So this is free.
Yeah.
So there may be VCA information that's happened behind here, but you're not looking at it up here. Or you're
Up here's
operating.
reactive. Up here's intuitive.
Intuitive. It's
You've done all of the programming
Yeah.
to give yourself the space for intuition. Right?
Back there is nerdy, up here is band.
Got you.
Sorry, up here is music, back here is brain, you know?
Brilliant. Because one of the things is if you can it's easy to get lost in the technicalities of a
Yeah.
mix and forget to listen to the music and enjoy.
Yeah, just
and
look around you.
enjoy it,
Yeah,
right?
enjoy it. Yeah.
You know, that's-
Just, I mean, there's a lot of, there's moments like the start of Hysteria where Chris is out there in the bass and you'll see he comes right down to the B stage and then he just kicks off and it's great fun to just go like whack that bass fader up and just go bah,
Yeah.
you know. And
'Cause
that's,
you know
and
what?
then finding your way out of that,
Yeah.
you digging yourself into a hole and then like getting yourself back out of it. You know, how do you get out of pushing the bass ATB up? You know, you got to mix it.
You used to love it, right?
Yeah.
It's the best feeling in the world, right? To be stood behind a mixing desk with a great band on the stage and
60,000 people going mad. Yeah. It's great. Yeah.
I wouldn't want to do anything else.
Yeah, so that's how
Okay.
this.
So we got-
oh,
we got
and
drums up.
to reference back to a question you asked me earlier about the transition and the choice
Yeah.
of using the console. Another massive factor for me is the surface.
Yeah.
When I was making this decision, I know I'm going to have to wear it for about 4 years, 5 years minimum.
Yeah.
You know, whatever decision I make with an artist like Muse, where the tour is long.
The tour cycle.
And so this surface just worked for me.
Yeah.
I was able to put things where I wanted to put things. I was able to get the surface to give me the information I wanted when I wanted it.
So I see there's a
and
lot
the
of color
XY
action going on
yeah,
as well.
the color action. Funnily, then you get into the show and you program the show, you don't even see the colors anymore.
Yeah.
The XY buttons, just fantastic, being able to customize whatever they do. One of the early ones I did was this is when I just kind of built the structure. I go, that's the bass, and I go, why is it the bass? You know, stuff like that. Or, you know, why are you the guitar?
Because it just spill out everything to do with the guitar.
But you know, I was able to make up my own logic that why meant, well, you're
why are you the
questioning
bass?
why
Why
are
are
you
you the guitar?
Why are you the
That's
guitar?
fantastic.
You know, and you know, that openness of being able to just like any logic you can think of, you can probably make the Surface do it. And that was just a huge factor for me.
Just to make that clear, that means that you can use that button to do virtually anything you want, and what you use it to do there is to interrogate that group.
Interrogate that group, spit it out.
Okay, so MC, we got inserts for the basically what I call the backline, really, right?
Yep.
Drums, bass, guitar over here.
Meat and potatoes.
Yeah.
Meat and potatoes.
That's where it's at, though, isn't it? That's where it all hangs together.
Yeah.
And then here, talk me through this rack.
Okay, so the GML and TubeTech are my stereo bus. The GML obviously is the venerable, I hate using that word, I really overuse that word, 8200 EQ.
Sure.
It's simply, I use it as a mix EQ. It's not a system EQ at all. It's a mix EQ. And I'm
really important difference, right?
Yeah, big important difference. Yeah, I just love what it does. As you can see, it's just little tickles here and there, and I try not to get stuck with it either. I'll move it around quite a bit. The TubeTech multiband.
Yeah.
It's just tickling away again, like half a dB here, a dB there, but it just does this lovely. I mean, the trick I'm trying to do with the high end, as you can see, is really fast attack, really fast release, and a high ratio. I'm trying to mimic a little bit of that old school VDOS tickle of the ear. I don't know if it's really doing it, but it does a nice little thing on the top. And then just a little bit of control in the low, but I'm not clamping the mix together at all. It's just little, you know, it's taking out a little half dB here and there. And it just adds a nice cohesion to things. Yeah, I guess. Yeah. And then just, you know, that extra
pulls the top end together.
Extra high end control, you know, just at the super top, you know, just catches any crazy things. And that's really good for to fight fatiguing your listener. You know, that spurious things get caught, you know?
Stuff you're not even aware of, but stuff that's
stuff that
make your ears
just spurious stuff that you know, it's just information that you know can just tire you out. I mean, SPL wise, my show is around like a 15-minute average sits at about 100.
Right.
And I'll go anywhere, you know, way down to, I mean, I don't go super loud, like 102 maybe here and there.
Yeah.
And it's strange actually when the measurement people come in, we don't really change our show and it's always compliant. But with
98 over 15 minutes is kind of typical.
Yeah, which is fine, you know. I mean, but you know, with the GSL and with the clarity of the console, I don't feel the need for more.
Yeah,
you know?
Absolutely.
And you know, it's you know, getting your audience through a show that's 2 hours long and not, you know, you got to have them fresh and listening to the last song as if it's, you know, as if it's the first song. And if you've just abused them the whole way through.
Absolutely. All that happens if you go too loud, too early, too consistently, their ears compress.
Their ears compress. They just get tired.
Or they go in their pockets and put the earplugs in.
Yeah.
I know, yeah. You've lost them.
Yeah. Then down here, sorry.
Okay, no, keep going. Yeah,
hammered again. This sits on what I call my kit stem. Kit being anything that's not a kick and snare.
Okay.
And it's simply a modded Fatso and the Mag EQ4.
Yeah.
Which is just has the most beautiful top end. It's
the air band.
Beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. The air band. As you can see, just a.
What are you doing with the Fatso?
It's kind of tape emulation-ish, but at a lower. It works at a lower frequency the frequency knee starts lower than the standard so is like classic tape emulation, which operate quite high.
Yeah.
This operates lower, if you know what I mean, sooner, which is great for when the cymbals start getting really trashy and stuff like that.
Nice and tight.
Just controls all that, and again, that's a fatiguing. It helps with fatigue.
Right.
Then that brings us to the summer. This again is a color choice.
Yeah.
It just brings a little bit of that. I mean, very overused word, but glue.
Yeah.
And as you can see, I'm using a little bit of the texture as well. That's just like it's like an emulation of the transformer.
Yeah.
I'll actually have to look that up properly what it is to make it sound nicer.
It makes it sound nicer.
Which has two modes.
Like
blue is higher frequency, red is lower frequency.
Right.
I leave it in blue.
Yeah.
Again, we blind A/B'd all this as well. So so the summer is just it's 16 monos, or as I use it, 2 monos and 7 stereos.
Wow. And that just pulls the whole thing together.
Pulls the whole thing together.
You read Keith Richards' autobiography. He talks about that, the glue of the music.
The glue, yeah.
He says he was in the studio. He wanted to get rid of all the separators. He goes, because where it all bleeds together, that's where the magic happens.
That's where the band is.
Yeah.
And so the return from that comes back here.
Yeah.
And that's what goes to the left, right.
That's what goes to the left, right.
That's what goes to the left, right.
Bring it back into the desk.
Yeah.
And then out again.
Yeah. So that comes back around there. Obviously, I've also got a sub auxiliary.
Yeah.
Sent to the subwoofers. That's timed to, obviously.
I was going to say, you got to do a little bit of latency compensation around
that's
all
fine,
of that stuff.
and that matches up with that. But the way I've done the sub is that I can move that one fader, and my sub and left, right all move together.
Nice.
Which is very important for me because I'm doing that so much.
Yeah.
I used to have a trick to do that in the XL4 with the mono and the VCA, and it was this convoluted thing, and I was actually able to replicate that same thing internally here to allow me the same behavior. I mean, I know you can do it with the mono, but I like the sub on an AUX thing. So you do
have an event then?
No. It's just like a construct, if you know what I mean. A routing construct. Yeah. So again, that goes back to simply, louder, quieter. Everything moves together.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
Cool.
Because it's all about the cohesion of the mix, right?
Yeah.
You don't want to bring bits of the mix up and down. You want to just kind of lean into it.
Yeah. Exactly that. Yeah.
Very nice.
Yeah.
Right. Cool. So, inserts. We got the kind of the summation, the kind of finalizing the mix, if you like, right?
Yeah.
And then let's talk about effects.
Okay.
MC, thanks for doing this. It's getting chilly. We've been here a long time, and now you've probably seen it's gone dark out there. They're trying their laser beams and stuff over there. So on this side of your setup, and I love how ergonomic your setup is. It's fantastic. No room for leggers in here, apart from me today.
Yeah.
So talk to us what's going on here.
Okay. So this rack is our vocal compression chain.
Yeah.
So basically, so Matt has we've got 6 mics that can be used. Mm-hmm. I group those into mics, or what I call in or out.
Yeah.
In meaning he's behind the system.
Yeah.
Out meaning he's forward in the system.
Sure.
And I treat those slightly differently.
That's good. Yeah.
So the subgroup comes into the old XL42.
Yeah.
Which I like to I've got to grab analog EQ here.
Because you've got a body memory of
it's just and it's the kind of thing I can just feel around. Then the distressor obviously is our compressor in that path.
Yeah.
And back, and so there's one for the in, one for the out, and the Avalon compressor is for his slightly overdriven vocal channel. Mm-hmm. The reason I've got that on top is again just quick control, because the finest adjustments on that, if there's feedback issues and stuff, you know what it's like. You can really feel it on the unit. And then just some record and playback machines. Effects rack.
the Hish 3000.
Yeah, we were just talking about that, right?
Yeah, so
Nothing else does that.
nothing
machine.
else does it.
Yeah.
No, even yeah, it's just one of those irreplaceable things.
Yeah,
It's
even more modern models, I always went back to the 3000.
yeah, no, it's all the 3000. No, 4000 is no good to me. The 8000 is no good to me.
No.
But it has, for me, it has to be the DSE.
Yeah.
You know, very specific with that. It goes. I don't know if it's a lucky charm thing for me, because when I started mixing Muse, I brought that on, and it's not even really doing that much. But what it does so well.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean.
M7 reverbs, one for vocals, one for, mostly use it for toms.
And are you AS in and out on those?
AS in and out those. Yeah. Using the, one is predominantly my snare reverb.
Yeah.
And I'm using the old school plate.
Yeah.
Most of the time. I mean, there's a bunch of presets in there that do different variations of distortions and short gated plates and stuff like that. But majority of the time, it's just the old SPX plate. Then the bottom SPX symphonic does a lot of the time. Again, it's another one of those things that you can't find anywhere else.
Yeah.
It also does some vocal doubling and some distortions. So yeah, obviously I'm mixing up this with some onboard plugin stuff.
Yeah.
Both effects, dynamics, and EQ.
Should we have a look at some of those plugins while we're here? Talking
So
about
effects-wise,
So how have you got your plugins laid out?
it's always a strange one when you're building your show file at first. Is how are you going to organize stuff?
Yeah.
And sometimes you end up with a system that you look at and go like, why did I ever choose that? But anyway, here we are. Drums are all my drum plugins.
Yeah.
Inserts are anything that are not drum plugins.
Yeah.
Vocals are vocal plugins.
Yeah.
Effects are effects. And what I've called outboard racks. So when I was building the show at first, none of this stuff was here.
Yeah.
So I just emulated all that stuff out here.
Knowing that you would go back to the originals.
Eventually go back to the originals. So this was kind of a holding place. I've kept all my trim stuff out here as well.
Okay. Nice.
So it's, that's kind of like my notepad, as it were.
Yeah.
So all this stuff is more fixed. So within the effects world, which is what I think we're talking about, this was a game changer for me. The the EC300,
genius,
which you put me onto. I'd used the Echo Pro for years and years and years, and I thought nothing would ever replace it, but this has. I mean, I know there's other delay plugins out there, but to how easy it was to integrate this into the show in terms of programming it, getting tempos sorted, all that was just so easy, and then so quick to get it to sound good. So I've got one on the main vocal.
Yeah.
I've got one on the BVs as well. So they're not always doing the same thing.
Got you.
This was another replacement that I thought would never happen, but the old DBX 120 is gone and the Pro of Subharmonic is in.
I always remember that was your that
was
tom sound of you hit that.
Yeah.
That was replaced it with this one.
And and again, I thought nothing will ever replace that.
Over
the and then in the beginning, I did have the 120 in the rack, and I went no, and then. But what had happened was I'd been mixing some stuff in the box, and I'd been using this quite a bit. So then on the drum side, it's there's a lot of just control. I really like, although the channel strip dynamics are fantastic, I just like the extra control that the Pro expander gives me.
They're great. They're just
great.
Pro series is really good.
Fantastic. Yeah. Little bit of Oxford dynamic on my overheads. I mean, that's really just tiny stuff for taste. On some of the drum pad stuff. So the DOM has two, what we call our SPDs, but they're not actually SPDs, but like standalone pads, electronic moments. It's got some down in the B stage, some up in the C stage, what we call the C stage.
Yeah.
So I've just got the arouser just gripping those together,
Right. So I associate you with the distressor for as long as I can remember. You used the distressors. A rouser plugin?
It's really good.
Close, huh?
Really good. Yeah, really good. And you know, there's a couple of little toys in it as well that are bring it beyond the distressor. The obviously a blend function.
Yeah.
As you can see here, I'm using it.
You are.
Yeah. The saturation is kind of interesting. You do kind of miss just like the randomness of, I don't really know what I'm doing here, but I think that sounds good. Whereas this is a bit more controlled. The attack modifications, you can see, I'm actually using that on this as well. Yeah, it's a really good plugin. Again, with the Pro Multiband on some of my playback channels, I'll just sit that on it. So it's on a song by song basis what it's doing. It depends on the content of what's going on there, and you know, it can tailor that to that. But you know, so quick, so powerful, you know, simple, straightforward, and you know, if you don't want it to sonically get in the way, if you know what I mean, it doesn't have to.
Yeah. It's phase coherent as well, right? So
exactly,
it doesn't mess with the phase.
It doesn't mess with the phase. It's you know, it's invisible that way. You know, a little bit of taste compression. These are more what I would call auxiliary channels that are happening here.
2As, BF76, standard kind of.
Just when you want to throw a different. Now, as you know, 901s were
901,
definitely my thing.
I just got an image of you just turning off a gig with a 901 under your arm back in the day.
And something I never thought it'd be replaced, but as you look around, they're kind of gone. Acoustic guitar, a rouser.
Nice.
But with the Oxford de-esser.
Yeah, I do exactly the same thing.
For the, you know, when the old strumming gets a bit too much. These again are just sitting on Chris's distortion channels. So Chris, the bass player.
Yeah.
Distortion channels. So the way the bass has got like a main kind of clean element, and then 2 levels of distortion that sit with that as well. So it's just tickling away. It's just it's a little bit of anti-fatigue and just catching stray things that come out. You know. Just a little bit of control on that. That's what that's doing. So then vocals. A600 again is just kind of replacing how I used to use the 901. Essentially, a little bit of D-howl, as I call it, and then just a little bit of control up here. You know, when you see it actually, I mean, it looks like there's a lot going on, but in operation, it's just tucking stuff out. It's most active around here. Yeah. You know, it's you know, because I don't want to over compress the vocal either. It's like we were talking about, like allowing things to get loud and quiet. Yeah. You know, it's okay.
It's okay. We're live. It doesn't have to fit in a.
It doesn't have to slot in. You know, it doesn't have to be within a 3 dB hole.
Okay, snapshots.
Okay, so how detailed the snapshots get depends on the song. I only automate if I need to automate. If the song calls for a level of automation. When you start building the show, you know what it's like. You at some point have to figure out what is it you want to automate. How do you want to automate it? Where's it all going to go? And how are you going to build the show? And in this instance, and so you don't have to go back to square one when you get 5 days into your program and going, But I have to say that process on this platform was the least painful I've experienced.
Good. So do you start with like a set? You go, okay, here's the song begins like this.
What I worked on first. So before I did all that, I worked on what I call my setup scene, right? And the setup scene defined the structure. So for instance, what plugins are mostly going to get automated? What's within the scope? What are the, what are we trying to automate? How are we trying to automate it? And then, so I create the setup and then the child. So the setup sets the song up, and then the child is the behavior of the scenes that follow on from that within the song. Okay, so that's my, that's my like master scene, as it were, there. So each song is just a variation of how many child scenes there are to the master. Or to the song. It's the best way I can explain that. So you can see once we get beyond that, it's not automation as much as the other stuff. I
Yeah.
actually weirdly automate my gates quite a bit.
Yeah, I've seen that. Yeah.
Well, that was a decision made back at the master scene. And the reason for that is I just love to maximize the dynamics of the drums, as in to make sure I catch everything that Dom's doing, you know?
Yeah.
Sometimes I'll break build-ups into like 2 sections, just to maximize all those moments.
Yeah.
I'm kind of lucky again with how good musicians they are that I can get into this kind of detail. I know that they're going to deliver consistently, you know, the level of that type of performance. I'm not going to say it's replicated all the time or it's boring, but that the intention and the dynamic is, you know, is always there.
So that was a big moment.
Momentary snaps.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit what you do with them.
Quite simply, some of them are, for want of a better word, get out of jail free. Actually, a day-to-day operation. Because I use virtual sound check quite a bit.
Yeah.
So, obviously, in virtual sound check, these pre's are not going to work.
No.
So what I've done is a routing momentary snapshot that simply reroutes the patching from that back into where they should be,
right,
and the whole thing works seamlessly.
Got you.
But obviously to go and patch that, it's going to take a bit of time. So I just have a momentary snapshot that puts me over to what I call virtual preamps.
Yeah.
XL88 preamps.
Yeah.
Or another get out of jail free.
Yeah.
If for some reason, you know, we lost power to these or whatever, or the multi got cut, or I don't know, whatever. I've got, you know, I can jump onto the Avid preamps.
Oh, yeah.
And again, we talked about, you know, I can also use that for taste. While we're talking about redundancy, I mean, I've got snapshots to also get me out of all of the outboard.
Yeah.
The next stage of redundancy, we have S6L24C for our openers.
Yeah.
Who's all been loving it. But I also have a redundant show over there.
Right.
So we can simply move the AVB over to there.
Yeah.
And I've got a full show that runs on that surface.
How you came to this, right? Because I remember talking to you about the events, and just so for the people that don't know this, there's basically an event is a trigger and an action, right?
Yeah, a trigger and action or a logic.
Yeah.
So if something happens, or something happens, or sorry, actually,
and something
happens, then do something.
Yeah.
So the trigger can be a multitude of things, and the action can be a multitude of things.
Yeah.
It's such a simple thing to say, but the possibilities are myriad. Really simple one. Line check MIDI in. So when we're doing our line checks, obviously I want to check the MIDI incoming from stage, but I don't want to fire scenes because, you know, so I simply set up a little thing that does a nice little chase of my function lights. And then just flashes the red light. I know that it's working. And then all my scene recall happens in here as well.
Right.
So rather than using LTC, I opted to stick with an old MIDI kind of time code system I developed when I was using the Midas consoles. As you know, Midas has no time code integration at all.
Yeah.
But what the Pro 2C did have was the global section, which was quite powerful. So what I was able to kind of make up a time code. So an example would be Uprising. We call that song 1.
Yeah.
So bar 1 of Uprising would be MIDI note C1, velocity 1.
Put that one up then.
Well, it's actually note 65.
Yeah.
Which is around middle C, actually, I think. So you can see when it sees note 65, velocity 2, it flashes the bar to let me know what's going on.
Yeah.
And then it will recall that snapshot. Why the MIDI and not a linear time code? You know, obviously when I came over to this platform, I was going, great, okay, I can just go linear time code.
Yeah.
There was 2 factors. One was I already had all the, for the kind of legacy songs, you want to call that, existing songs I already programmed. I already had all this data of where at this note, this is where the chorus is. At this note, this is where the verse is. So I was actually able to program a lot of this,
Pull it in.
you know, just as data entry, you know, almost. But the other great part about it is that if the band changed the tempo of the song, or rearrange the song, I don't have to change any of my programming.
If they chop out 4 bars.
If they chop out 4 bars, my recall will still work. If they change the tempo from 120 to 122, all my programming still works. I don't have to.
It's still there.
Yeah. So, you know, my friends in the lighting and video department are pulling their hair out, reprogramming everything every night, and I'm going to go, it's music. There's things like, you know, so if a channel becomes active, mute another channel.
Go, yeah.
Which is...
So using the meter above as the trigger.
Yeah, the meter above, which is, it seems like quite a simple thing, but it's quite a powerful thing when you, you know, start expanding that idea, like the behavior of something dictating the behavior of something else. You know, and I, to be honest with you, I only feel like I'm getting started with all this. You know, that's what it feels like. You know, lots of simple stuff like that more goes back to, you know, may not be useful for anyone else, but it's just ways I want the console to behave. And that's what's brilliant.
So you can customize the console to do what you want it to do, rather than have to have your workflow adjust to the console.
Yeah, and obviously I've talked about all these layers of stuff and but when you're operating it in what I would call a much more simple mode, I mean, how quick it is
as a mixing desk,
you know, as a mixing desk, how quick it is to lay out stuff where you want it is just genius. I mean, obviously you've got videos that cover all this, and you know I won't go too far into it, but it is so quick and so malleable.
Good man. You know, MC, thank you so much for sharing this. I'm sure people will be very interested in this, and you've been very generous with the amount of information that you shared with us, and I really appreciate it. And I'm dying to see the show tomorrow.
Hopefully it won't be windy.
Okay. All right. Thanks so much.